Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Creative Contact with your host, Kia Orion. I'm the man who is ready to rock and roll and almost slipped into my old intro, but I'm not going to do that. Thank you so much for tuning in. You could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with me, and I appreciate that. In today's episode, we're going to talk about a couple different things. We're going to talk about the doc that I released this last week. I'm going to dive into that a little bit. We're going to jump into life in Malaysia, including these cool new cutoff shirts that I got. And we're going to talk about next steps, what I've been working on, what's been on my mind, what's kind of been percolating in my soul and my spirit. So let's start with the biggest, probably most important piece of this entire podcast, and that's going to be these new shirts. I didn't go to a thrift store. I went to like an outdoor market, and back in the day, if you didn't know me, back in my college days, I rocked this look all the time. Boom, hit them with the cutoffs. Listen, I'm from upstate New York, baby, farmer tans, let's get it. This is just what we do. And so when I was back in college, I got really into cutoff shirts and cutoff jeans. I'd cut off the bottoms of my jeans. And this actually started to come back around now, I've noticed, like cutting off the bottoms of your jeans and maybe cuffing them or something, but still a cool look. And then I started cutting off the sleeves of my t-shirts. I just thought it was cool. Even back then, I wonder if I'm ever going to grow up. Probably not. Something I'm going to think about. We're going to talk about here in a second. But I was like, I don't have any scissors. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. I was like, let me take it to the tape. I lied. That's a bold-faced lie. I said, let me take it to H&M. That's actually what I thought. I took it to H&M. I asked them to cut it off, and I encountered a large man who was very opposed to that proposition. So I said, okay. Understand, he said it's not in the rules. We can't do that for a customer. I said, but could you do it for 100 ringgit? Maybe tried to bribe him, didn't work. I said, okay, rules are rules, although I don't even think that's in there. How likely is it in H&M they said, deny customers to cut off their sleeves if they ask for it? I don't think that that's in there, but it is what it is. So I went to the tailor, this cool Malaysian dude and his wife, and they for $5 each, they cut off these sleeves, and it actually made it look a little bit more like doable, a little bit more pretty. So I have been wearing very typical Kia fashion. I've been like super work focused on the writing and different things, YouTube channel shit we can talk about in a second. But I was like, it'd be cool to actually have something that I could wear out. And it is so hot here, y'all. You can see your boy sweating like a pig. I can't wear my normal Kia attire. It's either like tank top or topless. And so I wanted something that I could actually wear out if I was going out that just didn't have sleeves, because it's just crazy. I haven't been this hot in a long time. It's hot, y'all. It's real hot. But it's a beautiful thing. It's currently Eid, which is this Muslim holiday, and it's been Ramadan, which has been fascinating. Every time I'm in a new country that has this much of like a religious backbone to it, has this kind of much religion, like it's intertwined with the culture, it's always really fascinating. It forces me to reflect on my own experience with religion and also on religion as a whole, because if you've followed any of my recent videos and stuff on Buddhism, I have some pretty strong opinions on religion, which is why I created my own. You get one. But more than that, every time I come to a place like this that is very religious, I see all the beautiful pieces to it. And I feel this way in Thailand, you feel this in Indonesia. There will always, that's a strong word. I can see myself for a long time having my own issues with organized religions. That said, it continues to surprise me how, I guess it doesn't surprise me, but how powerful it is when you have an entire city, an entire state, or an entire country that rallies mostly behind the same ideas. Because there's a way to it. And I remember when I was in Philly, this is a strange analogy, but sports feels like a religion too. I remember when I was in Philly, it might have been, 2018, 2017, when they won the chip. And you could feel it in the city when there is a place that has encountered a lot of difficulty. I think that's why places like Green Bay, like Philly, these other places, these places where life can be tough, that having this sort of thing that unifies you as a group that you can kind of all come together under is really powerful. And so it's just interesting, right? In the States where we all kind of are sectioned off, in New York, you're a fan of this, you're a fan of that, or whatever. A lot of other countries, it's like, you feel, when they'll say, yes, it's like, in Latin America too, a lot of times I'll feel like they're like Catholic countries, but it's not like, it's different, you know? It's just a different vibe. Where here, especially during Ramadan, there's like fireworks every night. There are the prayers. I'm assuming they're prayers. I actually don't know what they are, but they're in Malay, I think. They come out of a loudspeaker like twice or three times a day. And it's like the whole joint, right? It's not like this little spot. It's like the whole city. And I remember too when I was in Thailand, even although this is different, it's more political, but I remember they would have these announcements at like 6 p.m. I'd be walking through the market or something buying groceries, and it felt like it was like a zombie movie where like people would be doing stuff and then it would come on and they'd all just like turn and just like stand and like wait for this like a speech or something to go through. I'd be like, this is insane. But it's powerful, you know, and it just helps me. It always makes me reflect too on like what do I treat almost, or what do I see that's almost like an invisible religion to me, even if it isn't as heavy-handed as the idea of quote-unquote religion, but just thinking about my own, it always helps me challenge my own thinking of ways of life that I assume that's almost like you're in the Matrix, you know, that you kind of, culture can become so invisible to us. And so it's just interesting being a fish, you know, dropped into another fish bowl where all the water is green, and you're like, whoa, like, I didn't realize my shit was blue this whole time. You know what I mean? But you're like, oh, okay. So it's been just really cool and forcing me to just reflect on that a lot. The people have been super kind, but the fireworks at like 11 p.m. I'm like, why can't we celebrate before bedtime? You know, I'm like, I'm down to celebrate any time before bedtime, but it's just interesting. You know, it's like, also just there's so many fireworks all the time, just like little children with explosives. And I'm like, in New York, people, these are illegal. Like, we aren't even allowed to buy these over the counter. And there's like 3-year-olds like holding like one of those like streamer things, just like firing off like explosive. It's just fascinating. It's a different world. And it's been eye-opening in a lot of ways, but also my whole point to this is that like I said, I'm not surprised, but that was a shout out to Nate Diaz for my non-UFC fans out there. But there's something really powerful about it. You can almost feel the cohesion that it's tangible. And there's something really powerful about that. I was talking to a good buddy about this morning, about how in the States we feel super divided right now, obviously. And I think in a way, this is Keanu's conspiracy theory shit, but I think in a way that is like a really good strategy for us to not be focusing on like the core pieces of like the more like human, of like pieces of the human experience in the States. It's almost like we get really divided over these like they're still important issues, but they feel almost like they're like I can't think of the right word, but like tangent issues in a way compared to like just like overall humanity piece. And it's just interesting where like in the movies, like when the aliens come down, it's like we all forget that bullshit really fast. We're like, oh no, we're all human. Let's band together. China, Russia, whoever we are, like let's get together. We got to fight this common enemy. And it's almost like we have a common enemy of like, how can we raise minimum wage, more like economic inequality, like big button issues that I think everybody believes in and wants. And instead we're like, no, we're going to get divided and like force us over here, because it kind of lessens our power in a way. The more we kind of like nitpick and attack each other, rather than if we were like one kind of unified community that we're like, nah, we need to revamp this whole healthcare shit. You know what I mean? Like just the whole piece of it, of being in a place that feels cohesive. And I'm not saying it's fairy tales and rainbows, right? It's 3 different cultures, so you feel that tension too. You know, Malay, Chinese, Indian, that's a really interesting dynamic going on. But to be in places where there does feel like this sort of like through line of belief, of community, of unity that it's cool to see, and you feel it. So we'll leave it at that before I get too crazy and political on you. So there's that. That's just been cool. Malaysia has been cool. And by cool, I mean super hot, but rad. I made friends with like this small group of boys that go out and I like play soccer with every day after work, or I got a badminton racket. We haven't played badminton yet because I hurt my back boxing because I'm an old ass man, but badminton's on the agenda and it's cool. And so like there's just this family of 4 brothers and they're always out there and they have like cousins and stuff and they're all just like little Indian dudes, and I'll just like be on my walk, listen to a podcast or something, and want to come over and we'll just like walk. Like there's this 5-year-old, no, he was 8 because he was born in 2015. How's that for mental math? Take that, Math B Regents. 8, and he's like, yeah, I was born in 2015. And I was like, that's insane. I was like, it feels like yesterday, but it was cool. He was just a little dude and he just like walked laps with me. He walked just like, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 minutes, and we talked about, what it's like. Because we live in the same building. I live on the 16th floor, they live on the 6th floor. And the elevators here are trash, so I've been walking up and down that multiple times a day. I'm getting fit, I'm getting shredded, walking 16 flights every day a bunch of times. But it was cool. Like the more time I spend with these boys, the more I start to wonder if I've made a terrible mistake having a vasectomy. Which is strange. I think the decision felt right when I made it, and I still feel like having a kid with someone I wouldn't want is the biggest mistake, my biggest fear. But there is something about just like spending time with these kids that is like, I'm like, kids can be cool. And I think that's the hard part, is if you get a shitty one, it can be so not cool. But like, there's a lot to learn from them too. Like it slows me down. I think as someone who's very intense, it slows me down a lot. As someone who, I'm jokey, but can be serious. It helps me a little silly, and it helps me play, that those things I think are important. And so it's just kind of got me thinking about what I really want out of life. And so I'm kind of torn, y'all, to be honest. I'm torn between Peter Pan syndrome, never growing up, and between trying to be an adult. And I think that it's like, it's all about sacrifice and compromise. And it keeps coming back to, I'm trying not to think like too far in the future. But I heard this really interesting podcast with this guy, I think it was last week. And he was talking about being an introvert. And he just released this book, super cool. He's a doctor, his name's Peter Attia. And he's all about like human optimization and health and stuff. And he was talking about, it's just this thought experiment of, if you were alone on if you were the last human in the world, but it was like a bunch of robots to do all the things you wanted to do. So like they'd still cook your food, robots to have sex with, like ones that play badminton, like they could do all the things that you would want, that you normally do, but they weren't human. They just like did the thing. So you were able to just like do all the activities you wanted to do all the time. And as soon as I thought about it, I was like, that sounds soul crushing. Like I realized how much I'm an introvert and I spend so much of my time alone working on the art, which I love to do. I love this life. But at the same time, thinking about how little of it means anything without anybody else. And so that's been on my mind a lot, is thinking about what are my responsibilities, not only, I think, and this is like the push and pull here, is like, what are my responsibilities as a man, financially, economically, that right now at the rate that I'm going, I'm not, because I pieced out from the business, I'm making like no money. I had this little nest egg that I'm rocking and rolling off for this year as I'm applying for an MFA program. Fully funded MFA, shout out to them. Say I get into an MFA program, fingers crossed, I'm working my ass off for it. You still make pennies, right? It's like the best programs are maybe like 30 grand funded a year. And so I'm like, okay, so then I have 3 years of still making, you know, when I was 24, I was making like 45 grand at like my first job out, technically my second, but like when after taxes, that goes so fast. And so I'm like, okay, so now I'm going to be in my mid 30s making 20 grand a year. And then it's like, say I really love it and I become like an associate professor of my MFA, and those are like 35, 40 grand jobs. So I'm like, how can I get past this bracket of making like amount of money that I feel like in order to have the impact I want to make more of, especially if I want to have a family. And so it's this strange place where I'm torn between like really being dedicated to the art, and I'm like, all I need is enough money. This is kind of what this has been my whole thesis, right, for a long time, is like, how can I have enough money to just keep making the art? And I think that is it's a beautiful thing if you're a single man. Because like I said, I live very minimally. I can do that. I can continue to just make enough money to live off of the art, to keep making art, and that's a beautiful thing. But if I want to have kids, if I want to have a partner, especially if it's a partner who I want to spend time with the kids, how could I support this whole family financially? And I have a really awesome friend who offered me a job, part-time job with his business recently, which has the potential to be relatively lucrative. And so I've just been at this kind of like turning point where I want to grow up, but I don't, like, you know, and so I'm trying not to, with the MFA thing, I'm trying to just like take it one piece at a time and be like, how can I just you can't turn down an offer you don't have. How can I just like become a killer writer, get into a program, study writing? It doesn't mean I'm going to be an associate professor or anything like that, but like who knows where it goes. But then just the interplay between age, time, and economics continues to kind of like swirl around, and like, you know, I don't want to wait too long, but it's just been interesting. It's been interesting. It's been on my mind a lot. I've been in trouble sleeping mostly because of the fireworks from Eid and Ramadan, but also just thinking about, you know, at this point in my life, this sort of transitionary point where I always assumed, you know, we were going to be out here, mini Drake, you know what I mean? Killing it. Didn't exactly turn out that way, so it goes. So that's just been on my mind a lot. Is thinking about, you know, just timeline, and at what point do I stop, you know, and that's the hardest part with art, is that it could always be the next thing, and like how can I not bank on it being the next thing? Like how can I find some sort of thing that's sustainable, and also pursue the art at the same time, and not necessarily needing it to be the thing. So that's just been on my mind a lot. But speaking of art, let's talk the documentary, and then it's already been 20 minutes, and then I'll get you out of here. So the doc, I dropped this last week. It was on my Aunt Kia. And thank you so much for the response, for watching it, for the comments. Like I said, the biggest project I've ever done. Jimmy, last time I was home, I think it was in October. So last October, I said, Mom, let's bust out the documents, all of her stuff. I said, I want to know this story. I sat her down for an interview, which you saw. I interviewed my dad, but we were in the car, so the audio was weird. I didn't use any of it, but he gave me some great perspective on the story too. And then I grew up in this tiny, shitty farmhouse in like way upstate, and my dad like paid $300 a year for it. And it's like this crazy dilapidated thing. But when I was young, I didn't know any better. It was just like this cool place where you could see the sun through the cracks in the roof. I was like, that's cool. But like now when I go back, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm glad that I'm not here anymore. But I wanted to go back there because that's where my mom in the doc, she talks about like where Keo is buried there. My grandpa's buried there. Other family members, I think, on the hilltop out back. My mom and dad got married in the hilltop out back. And so it just carries a lot of weight with like family history. And as I get more into video, into photo, into visual storytelling, it's cool to have that ability to like tell stories that I think are interesting. And I mean, it's my name, and it's my family, so of course I find it interesting. But I was hoping I could capture something that was interesting for other people too. And so I went back to that house. I brought Mom and Dad. I was like, guys, let's go back out to this house. I shot a bunch of shit with my drone, but I didn't use a ton of it because it just turned out, it looked kind of weird. And just took a bunch of photos of the house and like old furniture and like it's crazy. There's this room where my mom used to change our diapers, me and my big bro, on top of the washer and dryer. But we were we were pretty rowdy. I think my brother more than me. I think I was pretty chill, I think. And so my brothers always loved dirt bikes and like motorcycles and like automotive shit. And so if you go to this day to keep him like interested, so she had enough time to change his diaper. She put on the ceiling like, it's almost like a poster that has like crazy amounts of stickers of motorcycles and stuff. And if you go to like the right room and you look up, it's like still there. And so that was really cool to see. And to go back to my old room, me and my mom and dad had like I don't want to say a big argument, but we had an argument about which room I slept in. I was like, guys, I swear this is my room. They're like, no, it wasn't. I called my bro. I was like, wasn't that our room? He was like, no, it wasn't. I was like, fine. Crazy how your memory plays tricks on you. But I just like took photos of like her old like rocking chair. And it's crazy how much environments have memories, have experiences, have spirits almost like intrinsically, they like seep into the wood that, you know, or the materials that you can almost feel when you enter the place. There's like a juju to it that it had the weight of like beautiful memories of also some pretty dark memories that happened there and things that I know had happened there in the past. And it's like just the way that places almost they almost like capture sort of they almost like capture memories themselves and store them almost like so that they're part of the place. And it was really powerful. It was really cool to be back there, get the stories. I mic'd up both mom and dad and had them tell me a bunch of stories. None of that audio made it into the doc. And then once I shot the interview with mom, we went back through all of her old stuff and I was like, Mom, just tell me about this stuff and I'll film it, and got a bunch of B-roll. Mom had a bit of a hard time, understandably, because this was like mom's like role model, and it was cool. You know, I learned a bunch of shit. As always, right? You dive into your family and you kind of see stuff if you can bring some fresh eyes. These are stories that have always been right there, like an arm's length away. But it wasn't until I really dove into this that I learned a lot about stuff. Speaking of being articulate, stuff that I hadn't before. And it was also interesting to see differences in the story from my mom and dad, and then trying to like correlate those and be like, not pit them against each other, be like, yo, Ma, Pop mentioned this, what'd you think about it? Because this is different, and put them in conversation with each other, and to see the way that those conversations kind of shook out different stuff. And they, oh, no, actually you're right. And just how little I remember, and the stuff that I do remember, how different it's your memory is so tainted by perspective that it was really powerful. And then it was such a learning experience in terms of how to tell a story with all this footage, how to edit, how to color grade stuff, how to edit the audio. It was a lot of work, but it was cool. So maybe like I'd love to venture into more documentary filmmaking. I have a couple ideas of things that maybe shoot next time I'm home, but I'll keep those on the back burner because I've already kept y'all for 24 minutes and 14 seconds. So that's my update, thinking about family, writing my little heart out. I've been writing some cool shit. I've been getting there. The short stories I still feel like are a pretty bit of like still my weak link, even though I love them. But my poetry, I hired a poetry coach. So we've got another class this week, and so that's been cool. Again, it's like, what do you do with poetry? I don't really know, but I'm trying not to think about it, just trying to enjoy it and become the best writer I can be and see where it goes. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Thanks so much for tuning in, y'all. As always, check out my cutoff t-shirt, and then check out the documentary if you haven't already, The Incredible Story of Kia. And I'll check you on the next one. Thanks again. Peace.